It's my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Fear itself.
A world where the rule of law.
Fear to fear.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to RedPill Rapport. This is Romy, and we have a very, very special guest today. It's a very good friend of mine I've known for over the years. She's an author, she's a poet, an actress and a model. She's studied the realms of psychology, the metaphysical, the supernatural, theology, all that stuff. She's not your typical podcast guest. She's here to help humanity, and this is what we're going to do today. We're going to try to open humanity's eyes to the realm of what the topics that we're going to discuss. We have today the beautiful, the talented Kat Day. Kat, how are you?
I'm good. That was quite an introduction.
Thank you so much for being here. We totally appreciate it.
I don't actually feel like I live up to the extent of that introduction, but I mean, everything was accurate. I think it was the energy.
You're so humble. You're so humble. So, yeah, we're very excited to have you here today. And, you know, the topics that we're going to be discussing going forward and with the different guests that we have, we'll have some certain topics on it. But first, you know, I kind of want to talk about, I want us to get started by talking about your acting and your modeling career. Uh-huh. So, can you tell me how that got started in your life and where you're going with that?
Well, I have been modeling for 14 years, and I've also been a photographer and in various other parts of the industry. Accumulatively, everything that I've been doing with all of that has been almost 20 years long. The acting, I only barely started in October, and it was actually born of one of my creative writing efforts that turned into a tiny sort of screenplay application, and went ahead and recorded that with a director friend of mine. And I just went ahead and acted it out myself, just to have it, get my creative juices flowing in that direction. And I didn't anticipate the kind of response that I got for all of that. And pretty quickly, people started contacting me to do other short films and, music videos and things like that. And so I was like, okay, and I'm thinking the whole time, wow, I don't know that I even can act or that it's even something I've ever really wanted to do. It is a different kind of animal altogether than modeling. And so I just, I don't know if I want to do this or not. And then a friend of mine who is, he's always been an actor, but he's directing now as well and producing. He contacted me, pitching a series pilot to me. And I ended up saying yes to that. And so I've been running with all of it ever since. And it's been a roller coaster, but a very good one. And I try to tell people all the time that if something scares the hell out of you, that's exactly why you should do it.
Right. Isn't there a book? I think it's called Know Your Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know, but I would love to get my hands on a book like that because I think that I could definitely benefit from my own advice, and that's what I sort of did. I found really quickly that it was a lot easier to dish out that advice than to apply it in my own life, but I've done it anyway. And now that I've taken those experiences and accumulated them so that I have more examples when I do deal with my clients and things to let them know that, when applied and you do in fact force yourself into those roles of, okay, I've never tried this before and it's scary, but I'm going to do this because it's going to grow me and I'm going to learn from it. There's really no limit to where you can propel yourself from that point forward.
Right. So essentially just knowing what your comfort level is and getting out of that comfort level will put you in that, I don't want to say stressful situation, but, uncomfortable situation.
Well, there definitely can be positive stress. I will say that. I mean, there's stressors are, if you imagine, like a rubber band being stretched past its means, or if you were to take that same rubber band and ball it so tight, even at an inward coil, it's stressing too. So either way, that stress isn't necessarily good or bad. It just is. I think good or bad is only relative to our own perception.
Right.
And so, yeah, definitely. Letting that positive stress sort of, that's where your growth comes in. That's where, same thing with exercising and pushing your muscles past a certain limit, and you start feeling that burning sensation is where the growth is happening. And that's the same thing for the things that we do with ourselves.
Sure. Okay, well that's amazing. And so yeah, we grow from these situations, and it sounds like you've been going through these situations a lot, because I've seen your career lately, and you are growing. You're getting booked every day. It seems like. I mean, you're getting modeling gigs, acting gigs. I heard through the grapevine that there's something in the future for you going on this summer, and that has to do with the San Antonio Film Festival.
Right. Yeah. So that. I'm really limited on what I can say about that yet. They're actually asking that we not release information about that until after the 4th of July. So right now, being February, that's quite a ways away. But I will say that I'm absolutely honored that, to have even been approached about it at all. And it's actually very exciting, and I look forward to hopefully seeing so many of my colleagues over, coming to the event and attending the event. I know a whole bunch of the people that are going for sure, and I hope that within the months to come, I can drum up even more people coming out and supporting.
Well, we're definitely planting the seed right now, and the San Antonio Film Festival is no joke.
It is not. It's actually their 25th anniversary this year. So
that is amazing.
That to me, that's another good marker. The fact that numerically the 25, it's just.
Oh, okay. I can resonate with that. So congratulations on that, and I can't wait to be able to help you spread the word on that when you're ready to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll be back. Wait, I should say that much more foreboding. I'll be back.
Yes, that sounded much better. So, along your career, you also have a different side of you, and it's, your spiritual guidance side of you, and you have a website, and you have social media, and it's The Alchemist and the Butterfly. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at with that? Is that some sort of spiritual guidance that people reach out to you about?
Well, okay, so basically I was trying to figure out a platform in which I could combine all of my various talents and the aspects of what I do in a way that is beneficial to other people. I've always been a writer since I was a child. I think the first time I was published, I was 14.
Wow.
So it's sort of been in my blood forever. And I've written for magazines and I've done human interest pieces, light journalism and things like that. But what calls to my heart has always been poetry and philosophy. I used to be an avid reader of philosophy, but as I got older, I began to record my own philosophical insights and things, but I do it in obviously a poetic manner, a manner that it just sort of speaks to people. And so I created the website to host all of my writings that are sort of like the little gems that I put out there for to hopefully help other people. And then I started getting enough feedback that people started asking me questions and, well, how do I go about doing this? Well, when you touched on this subject, how can I get to this point and that? And before I knew it, I was advising people at length and at times for hours and hours on end. And I didn't know what to call it yet. I just knew that, I think at one point I wrote a small introductory that basically said, hello, my name is Kat and I'm here to help. And it started like that. And so that sort of evolved into, okay, how can I take this thing that's taking up so much time of my current reality, especially involving pulling me away from my mommy time, pulling me away from other work time and things like that, and how can I make it something that is lucrative enough that I can keep on doing it. And so I began to charge for what I do, but in such a minimal degree that anyone can afford to seek me out for advice, essentially. Right. And so that's when it all started. And at some point, I also began incorporating tarot with it as well, a little bit of numerology and things like that. I found that when I interact with people, especially on a face-to-face basis, and we're discussing sort of different life things that they're going through, when I would speak to them without any sort of buffer in between, I'd get sometimes a really freaked out response like, oh, how can you possibly know that about me? Or there's no way you could know this or that. And it would kind of unnerve people a little bit. So I began slowly integrating the tarot as more of a way to give them a comfortable buffer between myself and them. And it sort of takes away that eeriness, I guess, to some degree.
Right. So essentially they see that you have a tool that you're working with.
Right.
You don't really need that tool.
Not at all.
It helps guide you, I guess, or
it gives me a sort of a springboard, like a good solid starting point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't actually need it. For my own comfort level, for what's easiest for me, I really just enjoy straight intuitive readings for people. I like just being able to dive right in and just begin helping right away and not do the process and the pulling of the card and everything. But, I think each person has their own thing that makes them the most comfortable, or and in a way, they also have sort of a preconceived notion of what it is that they want it to look like. Right. Well, if I'm seeking guidance, then I want to see a magical looking card in front of me, or I want to see like a crystal or a this or that. It's almost like it goes into the underlying psychology of it. Like visually, they need that aid. And you know what? Honestly, to me, it's like, okay, well then let's throw that in too. But either way, we're gonna get to the root of what's bothering you, and we're gonna look at it in a magnifying glass, whether you like to or not.
That's fascinating. And so going deeper into this, mm-hmm. When you read using the tarot or not, do you get impressions in your mind? Do you get thought patterns? Do you get images? How's that work inside the mind?
The sensory that I pick up is sort of blanketed. I mean, it's audible at times. Other times it's extremely visual. I visually can see things occurring. Other times it smells, tastes. So it's even feelings. I've actually had circumstances where I was having this, this is only recently, I won't say her name, she was a private client, but it was her first session with me. This was, I think it was over the summer, this last summer, and I kept feeling this pulling sensation and kind of a very sore feeling right here, around into the side of my diaphragm the whole reading through. And I kept kind of touching and I was explaining something to her. I used some sort of metaphor, and I said, like, for example, and I went to this area and I started accentuating the diaphragm and everything. And I said, I'm sorry, this keeps happening for me. I had to pause everything I was saying to tell her why I kept touching at my diaphragm. And right here, I said, it's just driving me nuts. And it's something that's unavoidable. And she just cupped her mouth with her hands. And I said, what is it? And she said, I had to have surgery to be worked on right in this area. I had to have a repair done, and it's made it so that it's harder to take full or deep breaths in and all of these other things. And there's all this strain all the time. And I was just like, wow, it just sort of, so even down to things like that, it's just all of these intuitive perceptions.
Wow. So that's a clairsentient. Is that what that would be? Where you're feeling somebody else's?
Clairsentient. I know that clairvoyant is a visual, right? Clairaudient is so sentient. Yeah, I would think.
You sure think
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I have that as well. I consider myself an empath, and I do pick up people's energy when it's when they're either giving me a bad vibe or they're having a bad day. I feel it in my diaphragm as well. Yeah. So I've learned that is a clairsentient. So it sounds like you have a well-rounded abilities to pick up.
And these are things that have been happening or occurring for me since I was a little girl. And I've been expressing them to my family members, especially my female family members, like my grandmother and my mom. And I would open up to them and express what I would be feeling or what I'd see or, what I'd hear, things like that. And so, it's really, I think I'm really grateful for having had adults in my life who didn't freak out and run the other direction or tell me there was something wrong with me. Instead, they sort of did the best that they could to explain to their ability what it was that I was experiencing, and also to encourage me to continue to explore it and to look into it, but also to go within and sort of feel out for myself what it is that I think these feelings or these occurrences are telling me. And every single time that I would examine anything, all I could get was that it really was about that place or that person or that whoever it was, that it really wasn't anything trying to tell me more about myself. It really was just what I was picking up.
Right.
So I kind of explained to them after some point that, guys, I just think that I'm a really good receiver. I'm a really good radio.
Right.
More than anything.
That's so fascinating. So I know the audience that is going to be listening to this, a lot of them don't know about this realm and this topic. What can you say to them that can help the fear factor?
Well, I don't think there should ever be a fear about it. In fact, it's not really, I will say that in doing everything that I do, I never really encountered too much of a fear about it. Some people will have a little bit of fear in regard to themselves having experienced something they can't explain. But usually it's not really fear. What it is doubt. And I will say that, unless you've experienced anything like this firsthand or seen it happen or had someone read you, and there's no way you can explain how it is that they, know what it is that they know. Unless you've experienced that, if you're just a person who's naturally very doubtful-minded or just have been raised or conditioned to believe that, those things aren't real and all of this, it's sort of like there's not really too much that can be done about that other than going out and experiencing it. I mean, really, I'm the last person to convince anyone of anything especially when they've already done such a good job of convincing themselves of what isn't.
Right.
So.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about just facing our fear. Because there's people that don't understand tarot and how it works, and they're programmed, in my opinion, that they're programmed to fear it, or maybe they just don't know it. It's the fear of the unknown.
Okay, well, in regard to the cards, I will say yes. There are a lot of people that, based on their theologies or religions, they've been taught to fear. First of all, it's not necessarily the cards that they're fearing. Usually, their dogmatic belief system goes or expresses against divining futures and divining things. And actually, I can understand that, but in a less religious route, you can go. You don't ever want to necessarily try to look into the quote unquote future, especially as a reader yourself, because really what you're doing is you're manipulating outcomes at that point. The moment that you plant the seed in someone's head that this could occur or that could occur, you're kind of setting that up to happen, or the opposite to not happen, because you're creating that subconscious, like it's going to be like that wound on the top of their mouth that they keep licking, and they just keep tapping at it, and they don't realize that they're kind of forcing their outcome to that or the opposite way of it.
Right.
So really, what I do intentionally is I only deal in the present. I can go over whatever past that I'm picking up intuitively, energetically, etc. But the present obstacles, the present, things that they're encountering that are right now. What I can do is I can express to them, kind of, if you keep on doing this way, do you feel like it's going to yield good stuff for you? No, not really. Well, you're probably right.
Right.
But I won't tell them, this is coming next and that's coming next. So I will say that in regard to tarot, there are people who can and will look into, future events and things like that. And I'm not here to argue them at all, but I will say that as someone who has studied psychology, it's best not to tamper with other people's thought processes in relation to what's happening next. It's best not to plant those seeds, and best not to be suggestive of what's to come so much as to instead focus them in on what it is that they're doing right now and what are going to be the best ways to handle what's coming at them currently.
Right.
So that's just me. And the cards themselves, that's something it's ancient. That just goes back so far. I mean, I don't even want to get into dates and things because I'm kind of I'm not an expert when it comes to memorizing the exact history of things, but I know that even before there were tarot cards, there were runes, and then even before that, there were, ancient Chinese counting systems, and even before that, there were other things. So it's just one of those things that it's been within our wheelhouse as human beings forever.
Right. So there's different techniques out there to read energies and to read people.
Right.
Do you have any other techniques that you like to share with us?
Well, I have something that is interesting. I'll say. So I think that I mentioned about using the tarot card as just a buffer between the person and I, so that they don't, freak out that whatever it is that I'm picking up and telling them is, coming out. But so basically the way that I utilize that card, I don't read tarot like a professional, typical tarot reader does. What I am is I'm a medium. So the card for me is just a place marker. I was actually saying to you earlier that I am looking into finding some picture decks that are essentially just symbols with no words, sort of like the things that you would show to children, that maybe one drawing is just of a hand, or one drawing is of a ball, or, you know, so on and so forth. Because to me, it's just a place marker. What I do is I allow my eyes to rest on the card, sort of lightly meditate. And as I'm doing this, I'm picking up the person's energies. I'm picking up whatever, I'm listening in on whatever I'm hearing, smelling whatever I'm smelling, tasting, seeing that's coming to me. And I'm just kind of, all of that is culminating to what I'm then going to say to them. Because that's the case, it's I'm able to do that with anything. If they were to have an object in their pocket, or if I tell them, you know, take the objects in your pocket and put them on the table, I could do that just the same.
Oh, wow.
What I do enjoy doing is I have a collection of stones, so like quartz and jade and jasper and all kinds of different little stones and rocks, and I have them in a little sash, and I can pour them out and have the person choose a stone, and then the same thing. I'll just hold it in my hand for a while, get a sense of them, and then I'll start explaining to them what it is that I'm picking up. So even a stone then becomes that buffer. It becomes that thing.
Right.
And then I also have these little animal vertebrae that I found a long time ago in the woods on a walk with my son. I've cleaned them very thoroughly and sterilized them. And I put them into a little sash, and I'll pour those out, and I'll ask the person to select a bone, and then I'll do the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So it's funny because it seems very mystical and magical and fun, you know, but the reality is that there's a lot more radioactivity, like energy perception, frequencies going on, way more science going on than there really is what you would just call magic, you know? Right.
So that's very, very interesting. And thank you for sharing that. So there's a several different types of communities out there. The New Age movement was one of them. And, you know, I did some research on that, and it's more about focusing 100% on the positive, and not even looking at the negative, because they think they're going to attract more of that negative. Can you expand on your views on that?
Okay, so I am probably coming from one of the least popular platforms at this point in time with the PC culture. Everything is absolutely abundantly politically correct. And along with that also comes these politically correct lifestyle choices and sort of new theosophical lifestyle approaches that are considered correct and incorrect. And one of the things that personally for me irritates me the most is yes, that whole dogma of, you know, focus on the positive, don't focus on the negative, put the negative down, put it in a box, tie it in a pretty pink little bow and put it on the shelf and don't look at it again, and do your yoga, drink your expensive coffee, and everything's going to be just perfectly okay. That sort of mentality is so incredibly toxic for people, especially people who are seeking their way out of depression or through life difficulties, through grieving, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is that we have this entire spectrum of human emotion that are our neurological responses and physiological responses to our internal and external stimuli. You are angry because of science. You are happy because of science. You're in love because of science. These are chemical responses that are taking place inside of you, and they're taking place inside of you for a reason. A lot of things that are taking place are for us from a very primal survival point of view. Other times it's just energetically something will piss you off, but it's just something that's kind of rubbing you the wrong way. It's creating friction for you. There's a reason it's creating that friction. If you take that upset and you shelve it and you put it in a box, you don't look at it, and you just focus on all these other things instead, what ends up happening is you've done nothing to analyze the source of what's upsetting you so much. You've not troubleshooted to figure out, should you even be putting yourself in this environment if it's going to be something that's going to be consistently happening and consistently causing friction for you. You're not looking at if it's going to benefit you or be harmful to you in the long run. You're not looking at all of those things because you're trying to, quote unquote, not focus on the negative. And that's the most harmful thing that people can do. And also that repression, that choking down of the sadness, the hurt, the anger, all of those things, the humiliation, rejection, so on and so forth. Choking those things down leads to suicide. It leads to clinical depression. It leads to domestic violence situations. It leads to drinking problems and other substance abuse problems, to relying heavily on vices to mask it, all because you were told and you believed that you should focus on the positive and ignore the negative. Instead, that negative thing that you decided not to look at ended up being the tiny seed that later became this huge situation that changed the course of your life forever. Right. So that's just one example of the regurgitated new age nonsense and toxic advice that I see floating around all the time for people, and people trying to apply to their lives and not understanding why it's not working for them. You know, I don't understand. I'm doing all the meditation. I'm doing all the yoga. I'm doing all of the looking at the positive. And I'm sadder right now in my life than I've ever been. Why is that? Because you stopped looking at what's hurting you, because you put it down before you healed from it. You can't heal from something if you're not going to look at it.
Right.
One of the examples that I gave to you earlier was the thorn in the skin. If you get a thorn stuck into your finger, if you leave that thorn in your finger, what then begins to take place? All the skin around it and all the limb around it begins to swell and become infected and inflamed. And if it goes on too long, well, you're going to amputate that finger, because it's going to kill you if that infection goes to your heart. Right. Or what's the normal response for anyone? You get a thorn stuck in your finger, you what? You pull it out pretty immediately.
Take it out.
You're not just going to, oh, no, I'm going to leave
don't
it there.
Don't focus on the negative.
Because I don't want to focus on that. I don't want to focus on it, so I'm not even going to I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to say, look at that pretty flower and all these other things. And while I'm doing that, it's okay if I end up losing this otherwise perfectly good finger if I would just heal it, because I'm being told that I'm a dirty, no good, bad person if I'm looking at the negative. So it doesn't make any sense, right? Well, it's the same way for our feelings and for our natural emotions. It's
Right. I totally understand where you're going with that. You know, and it seems like just, you know, people have, you know, cycles that they go through, and it's a vicious cycle where they just do the same thing over and over again. They get the same results, and yeah. It's, you know, it's hard to pinpoint that key moment in their life or in that cycle that they need to be mindful about and to change that one thing that's going to take you off of that cycle and into a whole different reality. Mm-hmm. So maybe focusing on the negative and approaching the negative and trying to overcome that is the thing that needs to change.
Right. I think a good starting point for those this is a good thing. For those who feel lost at any given point in time, a good thing to focus on, or to a good place to begin, I suppose, is all of the areas that you're the most uncomfortable about. All of the things that are the least comfortable for you to deal with and to look at, those are the first things that you want to look at. Take that flashlight and shed light on it. Really, really delve in and figure out what is going on here. Why is it that I keep going back to this? Ask yourself those questions. And it's funny because we all come from this place, I think, naturally in a defense mechanism sort of way where we think we already have all of the answers. We do have all the answers, but those little surface answers and those that ego that gets in the way that says, oh, I already know why I keep doing this. Well, then if you know so much, then why don't you, why is it so difficult for you to stop it?
Change it.
Exactly.
Change it. So yeah, it's easy to give somebody else advice all day long, but once it comes to you, can you take your own advice?
Right.
And there's services out there that can help give you that guidance that you need. There's life coaching. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've delved into a little bit of that as well. Right.
Well, for me personally, I'll go in two directions with this. One, to start, I will say that what I found is exactly that. It's always been so easy for me to tell people what it is that I'm seeing from the outside point of view, and what if changed, how their lives can be enriched, and all these other things. And then as I would advise these people, and another situation would arise for myself, I would hear my own voice sort of echoing back to me, and I would feel my stubbornness like, yeah, I'll do that next time. Yeah, I'll do that next time. And it wasn't that I doubted my own advice. I knew exactly how right I was. However, I was investing in the hope that I was wrong.
Right.
Because you want to believe the best in other people around you. You want to believe that, maybe your luck is a little better than you think it is, things like that. It wasn't until I got to that place where I was looking straight into the abyss and I had to make a decision like, look, I take my advice now, or I can just stop trying. But I will say that once I did begin to really most fully apply my own advice, I think my big turnaround was starting the end of November till right now. In this short amount of time, you can see outwardly, I mean, everyone else that's on the outside of me that's watched me can see such dramatic change in such a short little bit of time. And I've actually been flooded with questions about, wait, what's going on? How did you, and really the only thing that I can tell them is, I stopped messing around and I actually started applying my own advice.
Oh my gosh.
I actually started doing it. And so for me to see how effective it is, like that's just the most clear-cut example is my own life. And I'm realizing, wow, okay, there really is something to all this. I know that there was, but I think that there was a part of me that felt like the gift is only there for everyone else. But to realize that, oh, wow, it's for me too, is sort of a very profound sort of mirror that's been turned on the situation for me. In a secondary way, I will also say that I absolutely did not get to this place on my own. I have had so many amazing teachers in my life who have in their own way sort of given me these little gems from time to time, or in some circumstances just through a prolonged amount of time. Sort of started with my grandmother and my mother, like I was explaining. But most recently in my life, I think since 2014, 2013, somewhere around there, so about 6 years now, I've been actively listening to or reading all of the advices that Kimberly has put out to the public for everyone to essentially just anyone who's struggling or encountering any sort of similar life obstacles and things that she has or that her clients has. She's just sort of left little gems for everyone. And I've found that kind of relating to so much of what it is that she puts out there, being on that same wavelength as far as coming from the heart center, coming from a very colorblind and open mind, and wanting to see people succeed so badly. The fact that that's where she's at and that's where I am, just sort of learned so much from her. And Kim and I are actually the same age. And a lot of times as I'm reading some of what she puts out there, I feel like she's older than me because of that wisdom set.
Right.
And then there's been times where I've said something in person with her, or we've had a conversation in which she's like, thank you so much. I needed to learn this or feel this or whatever. And so you sort of realize that you're both kind of teaching each other, but she's just absolutely amazing. So it's Kimberly Scott for anyone who wants to look her up. Okay. She has it's called Not a Basic Life. And you can find her there on Instagram, and you can also, I think they have a New Natives is what it's called, is their other company. So, okay. But yeah, she's amazing. I would recommend her to anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely get a link on the channel for Kimberly Scott. Now, is she local? Is she in San Antonio?
She is absolutely here now. She has been between here and Seattle for the longest time throughout the years, and I believe that she is residing here for not permanently, but semi-permanently for a while. And she takes on clients all the time. But she's selective by way of she will help those who are in the business of helping others. Wow. That are already coming with open hearts and open hands, saying, what do I do with these? Wow. With these two things? What can I do with these to help other people? And so that's where she makes her decisions from. But yeah, I'm actually supposed to be doing I'm going to be interviewed by Kim coming up here not too long from right now.
Oh.
So yeah.
Oh, wow. We'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Interesting too.
Yeah, we may need to try to get her on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Get her on Red Pill Rapport. Well,
I don't mean to chime in right there, but yeah, that's something I was going to point out. Helping podcasts, that's a big thing going on right now. It's the circle of everybody building on everybody, the positivity of that going up.
Empowerment.
Exactly.
Always like entities empowering and propelling one another forward. And it really doesn't matter what specific area you're in, as long as you have that same agenda underlying everything and just aiding others around you. That's all that really should matter.
Oh, that's wonderful. And, and that's the platform that's the intention that this platform has, is to help humanity, help people out there who have the same questions as us, understand, and just know where they are in life and where they can go. And,
right.
And so Kat, thank you so much for being here. You've answered so many questions. You give us so much wisdom. We certainly appreciate it. Why don't you tell our audience how they can get a hold of you, what services they can inquire about?
Okay, so you can most easily get a hold of me through, and I know, don't laugh, through
MySpace?
MySpace is dead. No. It's most easy to reach me through Messenger or Facebook. So it's just Kat Day, KATDAY. You can reach me there anytime. I'll just get to it as soon as I possibly can. That's where I connect with most of my clients at all times. You can also reach me on Instagram. I have it's the @butterfly_alchemy, and that's for my spiritual guidance and what have you. If you're looking to hire a model or actress, you can go to @model.catday. But yeah, those are the easiest ways to reach me thus far. As far as services that I provide, I conduct my intuitive readings, and I also do the life coaching. They're pretty much lumped together. I do where I offer the online through video chat for those who have a difficulty getting around or just have conflicting schedules. And I also do in person as well if you're in the San Antonio area. If you're outside of the San Antonio area, as long as you pay my travel expenses, I will show up and show out.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much, Kat. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you, audience, for listening. You're listening to Red Pill Rapport, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.